When you really think about it, words have this incredible power. I mean, we've seen it time and again, right? From Pablo Neruda's poetry basically staring down dictators to Walt Whitman dreaming up a whole new vision for a continent. It's wild how poetry always seems to land right in the middle of these huge, history-changing moments. And that really gets us to the heart of what we're talking about today. How can something be so dangerous and yet so incredibly beautiful? It's a huge question, and that's the mystery we're going to try to unravel together in this explainer. All right, let's jump right in. The best way to think about poetry is as a double-edged sword. Seriously, imagine its power is like a razor-sharp knife. Now, a knife isn't inherently good or evil, right? It all comes down to who's wielding it and why. And here's where it gets really stark. Look at these two examples. On one side, you have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. using rhythm and metaphor to paint this beautiful, powerful dream of freedom for millions. And on the other, you've got Nazi propaganda using those same tools, rhythmic slogans, to create blind obedience. The goals couldn't be more different, liberation versus oppression, but the underlying mechanism, it's almost identical. And that's a little chilling, isn't it?
So, what's going on here? Well, this is poetry's secret weapon. It has this uncanny ability to just slip past our logical brain, our shield of reason, and talk directly to our emotions, to our subconscious. Think about it. People didn't just listen to Dr. King and say, yeah, that's a solid argument. No, they felt it. They started to share his dream. And here's the uncomfortable part. That power, the power to move hearts instead of just minds, doesn't have a built-in moral compass.
This fear of poetry isn't new at all. In fact, it's ancient. To really get to the bottom of why it's considered so dangerous, we've got to go back more than 2,000 years and talk about Plato. Yeah, that Plato. He famously wanted to kick all the poets out of his perfect society. Why on earth would he do that? Okay, so the textbook answer, the one you probably heard in school, is that Plato thought poets were basically liars, that they just created imitations of the truth, these fuzzy copies, instead of dealing with pure hard facts and logic. And, well, that's not exactly wrong, but it's only a tiny piece of the puzzle. The deeper truth, the real reason Plato was so terrified of poets, is way more interesting. He wasn't afraid of them telling lies. He was afraid of them telling truths, truths that power can't control. So what are these uncontrollable truths? Well, they basically boil down to two things: the truth of our emotions and the truth of our memories. See, any powerful system wants to create one official story. This is how things are. This is what happened. But poetry messes all that up. It digs up our personal feelings, our shared memories, all the things that have been pushed aside. It gives a voice to the part of us that whispers, wait a second, that's not how I remember it. That's not how I feel. And this sets up poetry's two main jobs when it goes head-to-head with power. It's a weapon against lies, and it's a weapon against forgetting. Take this line from Langston Hughes, I, too, sing America. That's not just pretty words on a page. That's a political firebomb. In that moment, he was directly challenging the official lie that a Black person wasn't a real American. It was his way of saying, oh, you can try and hide us away, but this country is ours just as much as it is yours. And that right there, that's a perfect example of poetry's first dangerous truth. It's a weapon against the official stories, the big lies that a system tells to keep itself going. It shines a light on a reality that those in power are desperate to keep in the dark. But then there's the second truth, and this one might be even more potent. Poetry is a weapon against forced forgetting. Because what does every oppressive regime want more than anything? They want you to forget. They want to erase their own violence, to rewrite history so they come out looking like the good guys. A powerful example of this is the Gwangju Uprising in South Korea in 1980. The government shut everything down. No media, no outside contact. The city was an information black hole. So who recorded what was actually happening? The poets. They scribbled verses on scraps of paper, creating a record of the truth. Their poems became the collective memory, the living testimony that fought back against the state's attempt to just delete the event from history. It shows you, when power tries to silence truth with violence, poetry can become the one witness that just refuses to die. The poet Czeslaw Miłosz, a man who survived both the Nazis and the Soviets, put it better than I ever could. He wrote, "Do not feel safe. The poet remembers. You can kill one, but another is born." Wow.
That line positions the poet as the #1 enemy of any power built on forgetting. Because no matter what, the poet always remembers.
Okay, so we've established that poetry is dangerous. But what about the other half of our question? How can all this danger also be beautiful? This huge paradox. I think the best way to understand it is with a phrase from the Irish poet W.B. Yeats, a terrible beauty. I mean, what a contradiction, right? Terrible and beautiful. So Yeats came up with this phrase after the 1916 Easter Rising in Ireland. It was a rebellion that, from a military standpoint, was a total disaster. It was crushed. The terrible part is pretty clear. Violence, death, failure. A complete tragedy. So, where in the world does the beauty come into it? What Yeats realized was that out of all that terrible failure, something new and powerful and beautiful was born. That military defeat turned into a kind of spiritual victory. It lit a fire for Irish independence that could never be put out. And that transformation is poetry's ultimate magic trick. It takes the raw, ugly, terrible reality of chaos and destruction, and it helps create something beautiful and new from it. The danger of poetry, its willingness to look horror right in the eye, is exactly what gives it the power to create, to literally build a new world from the ashes. So let's bring it all together. Why is poetry so dangerous to the way things are? Simple. 1, it tells the truth when power tells lies. 2, it remembers what power wants us to forget. And 3, and this is the big one, it makes us uncomfortable with the present because it forces us to imagine a better future. Okay, so we've looked at history, we've looked at philosophy, but now I want to bring this all back to you, right here, right now. So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. What's the poem you live with? And it doesn't have to be a poem. It could be a song, a piece of art, a story. What is that core truth that you carry with you? And maybe the most important question of all, who does it make uncomfortable? By the way, the analysis in this explainer was inspired by the book Why is Poetry Dangerous? So if this got you thinking and you want to go even deeper, you can find the book for sale on Amazon. Thanks so much for joining me.